Hey everybody, this is Don with Living Chronically, a channel designed to keep you positive and motivated while living with chronic conditions. Today's video is just an amalgamation of 3 previous videos I've already posted. My positivity video, my motivation video, and my resilience video. If you've already seen them, don't worry about this one. If you haven't, or if you want to watch them again or listen to them on a commute or something like that, by all means, this is a good way to do that. So I've put them together in one convenient package so that you can get all 3 in the same place. And hopefully you'll enjoy the content. And like I said, if you've already seen them, then don't worry about this one and just skip on to the next. Hey everybody, Don with Living Chronically, a channel dedicated to staying positive and motivated while living with chronic conditions. I have my lean on today because my back is bothering me, so bear with me here. Yeah, it's been an interesting morning, but I'm okay. But today I want to talk about positivity because I think it's important to sort of define the terms that I'm going to be using in the course of my videos. I'm a details person, what can I say? So when I say positivity, what do I mean? When I say staying positive, what do I mean? I do not mean sunshine, rainbows, sparkles, and a permanent smile plastered on your face even when you feel like crap and you're waving and smiling and trying to pretend that everything's okay. I don't ascribe to that sort of toxic version of positivity. I don't ascribe to the hallmark version of, happy endings for everybody and, high drama, high reward situations. For me, positivity is, in some ways, sadly more realistic. It encompasses both the good and the bad that is common in our everyday lives. So there's plenty of room for sunshine and rainbows, plenty of room for those moments when we are rushing forward and everything feels great. The wind's at our back, everything's exciting. Life feels wonderful. Our conditions are at a very low ebb and we're just able to do a whole bunch of things really quickly and really well. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience. That's part of positivity. That's part of staying positive. But positivity for me also includes the times when we're just coasting along, when we're just treading water and trying to keep ourselves afloat and stable and making sure that things work. And it also includes those times when we run into setbacks, when we stumble and fall into a pit that we then have to dig ourselves out of, or when we hit a wall and we have to figure out a way to climb over it or go around it or tunnel through it. It is the process by which we continue to move forward. That, positive momentum is more what I mean. I mean that no matter what is going on, whether we are at our lowest or at our highest, it is the knowledge that whatever goal we are reaching for, whatever thing we want to accomplish, whatever dream we have, whatever milestone we want to reach, we are going to continue moving towards that. And the idea that, even if things change, even if our conditions change, even if things get worse or we have to, deal with additional complications or something like that, it's the knowledge that once we stabilize, once we dust ourselves off, once we dig ourselves out of that hole or tunnel through that wall or get past that obstacle, we will then see that goal, that idea, that dream in the distance, and we will say, okay, I've come this far. I still want to get there. How am I going to do that? And then we may have to change our approach because of a changing situation, or we may not because we have overcome our latest issue and we're sort of back to where we were before, and so we can continue on as before. So that is my version of positivity. My version of positivity just means moving towards our life goals, our dreams, our, milestones, whatever it is that we value in our lives that we want to accomplish while we're here, that help us live good lives, that help us feel sustained and feel positive and wonderful. It is the process of going towards those things and reaching those things and experiencing those things and remembering those things afterwards and then finding new things to go after later. That's what positivity means for me. That's what staying positive means. It is the process of moving forward no matter what's happening. It's not easy all the time. Sometimes you're running along, sometimes you're walking along, sometimes you're crawling along, and sometimes you're not moving at all. You're sitting there looking at the distance and you're thinking, how am I ever going to get there? And in all of those moments, you can be positive as long as you are thinking at some way, in the back of your mind, somewhere, you know what? Sucks right now, but I'm going to get there someday. So that's what staying positive means to me. What do you think? I'd love to hear it, so please leave a comment down below if you agree or disagree, if you have additional components to your idea of positivity. And until the next video, I will say this: stay healthy, stay safe. I believe in you, and I will see you next time. Boom. Hey everybody, this is Don with Living Chronically, a channel dedicated to staying positive and motivated while living with chronic conditions. Today's topic of conversation is motivation. What do I mean by it, and what does that look like? I have my trusty notes here, so as always, if I'm looking at them, hopefully that won't be too disruptive. Hopefully I won't have to look at them very often. So when I'm talking about motivation, right, I think a lot of us already understand motivation. It's the stuff we want to do or accomplish or obtain, milestones we want to reach, experiences we want to have, stuff we want to buy, whatever, right? There's a lot of different kinds of motivations in the world, but ultimately they are goals that we wish to reach. Generally, I think motivations are good, providing we're not hurting ourselves or somebody else in the process. So if that is the case, if you look at your motivations and you see pain in someone else or pain in yourself as a result of those motivations, I think the healthy thing to do, the proper thing to do, is to reevaluate what you're doing and approach it from a different way, because obviously you don't want to be doing that because you're not doing yourself or anybody else any good in that way. Having said that, if your goals are generally not hurting anybody else or yourself, then have at them. Having said that, there is definitely a healthy and unhealthy relationship that we can have with motivation, with our goals, with our dreams, with our milestones. Now, the best example I can think of is what I went through when my diagnosis came back as chronic pain. At that point, my motivation became entirely, how do I get back to where I was before I was diagnosed? How do I get back to that stage in life when I could do things without having to worry about this situation? And what would I need to do that? And the problem is that when we're dealing with chronic situations like this, when we're dealing with chronic conditions, the likelihood of getting to a point where that chronic condition is gone, completely gone, it's not generally realistic. It's not that it can't be done, and for anyone who has accomplished that, well done. I mean, you have my respect and my yeah. But in terms of the majority of us where that isn't an option, I think it's unhealthy to think of these goals as an all or nothing thing. So if we go back to my example of wanting to get back to where I was before I got diagnosed and what I would need to do that, I spent a lot of time researching supplements, medications, exercises, stretches, basically looking for that one miracle that was going to get me back to being healthy. And I didn't want to accept anything other than that goal. I didn't want to accept anything other than that milestone. And the problem is that the longer I spent doing that, the more effort I expended in chasing that remote dream, that remote goal, and the more failure I had along the way, the worse I felt. I kept having these problems. I would have some hope. I would feel good for a day or two. The reality of the situation would set in. Whatever I was doing wasn't working as well as that I hoped it would. And then I'd go back into that spiral of never-ending thought and catastrophic thinking of, well, this isn't going to work. I need to move on to the next thing. and so on and so forth, always, going deeper and deeper into that despairing mindset. And what I was missing along that way was that while nothing worked completely, some things worked a little bit. And if I stacked all those things together, I actually would have had a better result than just abandoning them and trying something else again and again and again. So that's what I mean by having an all or nothing relationship with our goals, with our milestones, with our ideal scenarios. I don't think it's very healthy to put all of our eggs in one basket like that, because anytime we have a setback, anytime we suffer some kind of a hindrance or we hit a wall, that can really just destroy our house of cards, because we've built everything on one specific idea. And if that's a huge idea that's off in the distance, we don't really have a lot of control over that. And the likelihood of having a setback, is much higher, as is the likelihood of failure, because the harder something is to attain, the further away it is from you, the less likely it is you're going to reach that goal in a reasonable amount of time. It's not that you're not going to reach it. It's just, if you're looking off into the distance, that's a lot of distance to cover. I think the best example I can think of is like, okay, so let's say you want to obtain $1 million, right? You have $0 right now, you want to get $1 million. And if you go from 0 to 1 million, that gap, and nothing else will do, that is not going to be a fun ride. But if you say, okay, I'm at 0 right now, my first goal is 100. My second goal is 200. My third goal is 300, and so forth, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. You set these little milestones along the way, and all of a sudden you realize each time you hit one of those milestones, hey, I feel pretty good. That's a nice feeling. And that is what I'm aiming for. That's what I think we should all be aiming for, is these little manageable milestones along the way to the bigger milestones, which give us the confidence and that feeling of accomplishment as we go, because that is what's going to give us the strength and the armor against all of the bad things that happen and get us back on our feet faster. So what do I mean by small or little steps, small milestones? I like to call these things short-term goals. And these are the things that I can do on a day-to-day basis when I'm feeling at my worst, so that I can take at least some control over my life, my well-being, my sense of independence, right? They're all simple things. Getting up in the morning, getting something to eat, getting dressed, making sure that I keep myself and the house clean, making sure that I tell my wife that I love her and that I appreciate the help that she offers me. Just simple things. Doing some stretches, doing a little bit of physio, doing a little bit of exercise. Just, again, nothing big, nothing complicated, basic stuff that keeps me focused on myself and feeling good, and the people around me, and making sure they don't feel bad as a result of me feeling bad. It's not always easy. I don't always hit them all, but the more that I hit on a day-to-day basis, the better I feel overall, and the less likely it is that I'm going to wallow in that feeling of helplessness and despair when I have a flare-up of my condition. So again, the short-term stuff is the little things you can do on a day-to-day basis to build your confidence and to build your sense of accomplishment, and over time make yourself feel a little bit better, both mentally and hopefully physically, because if your treatment plan is doing what it's supposed to do, over time, the flare-up fades and you get back to normal life. And I found that in my situation, the more I focus on these little things, the faster that happens, the less trouble I have along the way, and the less mental strain I experience throughout that process. After I've done enough of those short-term goals, then I can start working on the medium-term goals, right? So if if all of the short-term goals that I described were sort of just around the home and just around the people that I care about that are like in my life on a day-to-day basis, the medium-term stuff or the medium-sized goals are things like going out of the house for a walk, going on a hike, trying a new activity, getting over a fear, right? Things that are bigger and more complicated, that take a little bit more planning, take a little bit more time, a little more effort, but are still doable and are sort of a natural progression of the steps that I've been taking already. And it's important to remember when you're doing these things, not to push too hard. And if you do suffer a setback during this process, to accept that setback for what it is, that it's just a setback. It's not a door slamming shut. It's just a chance or an opportunity to reevaluate and potentially change your approach, right? Because again, if you're looking at this from a perspective of not having an all or nothing viewpoint, then failure isn't failure. It's just a setback, and you can alter your approach. You can go around that situation. You can go around that problem. You can go over it. You can go under it. You can tackle it a different way. You can bring some support, whatever it is. You can get over that thing, and then you can keep going along towards your ultimate goal. So by doing these things repeatedly and by practicing these motivations, these small and medium term things, we're building a foundation, right? So I look at it like a staircase. So each time I do one of these daily tasks, I'm taking one little step up. Each time I'm doing one of these medium steps, I'm doing another little step up. And I'm building this staircase and going up and down it over and over and over again. And each time I add a step, I get a little bit higher, a little bit closer to those long-term goals. Each time I build that confidence up, I armor myself so that if I trip and fall, I get back up and I keep climbing much easier than if I didn't armor myself, or if I didn't prepare myself with all these little steps. Like if they were huge steps, you trip on a huge step, the fall is much bigger. If you have all these little steps in between, the fall is much smaller. More chance you're going to catch yourself before you go all the way down. That's also one of those nice little bonus points. But as I build this staircase and I keep going up and down it and strengthen myself as I do these things, right? Over time, what I found is I'll look back, I'll look down, and I will see how far I've come and realize I've climbed a hill or I've started to climb a mountain, right? The distance between base level and where I'm at just keeps increasing, and I just keep getting higher and higher and higher, and I just feel better and better and better. And I'm hopeful that this approach can help you as well, because that's what this channel is about. It's about making the information, making the ideas, the strategies available so that you can apply them in some way to your own situation. All right, I think that's enough out of me for now. I have had a thought while making these previous two videos, the first one on positivity and this one on motivation, that there needs to be a third one on resilience, because if positivity is the process by which we continue forward towards a better life, and motivation are the things that we are focused on as that better life, then resilience is the strength we need within ourselves to actually do those things. So I'm going to prepare a video on that, and that'll come up soon. And then down the line, I think another helpful video might be the process I go through, the planning mechanisms that I use, the planning strategies that I use to actually plot out how I'm going to get to my short and medium term goals and how I'm going to get to my long term goals. If you think that'd be a good video, please let me know in the comments. If you have any issues or comments with this video, please also let me know in the comments. I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and I believe in you. Bye for now. Hey everybody, it's Don with Living Chronically, a channel dedicated to staying positive and motivated while living with chronic conditions. And today's video is about resilience. So I've already talked about positivity and motivation. Those videos are up here. This one is the third part in the series about specifically the strength to get through our darkest times. That's what resilience is, generally speaking, defined as. It is the confidence in ourselves and the strategies and the skills that we use to get through challenging moments, whenever life gets unbearable, whenever things go wrong, whenever we feel at our lowest points. Resilience is our ability to bounce back. It's our ability to slowly take stock of ourselves, dust ourselves off, climb out of that hole, whatever it is that we're experiencing, get through that, push forward. That's what resilience is. Now, some people are lucky enough to develop it innately. If you've had a lot of negative experiences in your life and you've also had the right support system in place, you could already have really well developed resilience skills. If you're like me, or a lot of people, you didn't have them. And you may not have them right now, and that's okay. I certainly didn't have them. I was not prepared for most of the difficult things that happened in my life, simply because I didn't really understand how life worked. I kind of wandered through my childhood and adolescence into adulthood without really ever having many extreme challenges along the way. It was basically a regular middle-class upbringing. There were things that I had to deal with, but I was always able to just ignore them or move past them or whatever without really facing down the problems. It wasn't until I was on my own out in life where I started to have these difficult times where I really realized just how lacking I was in terms of my skill set in dealing with difficult situations. And there's different kinds of resilience. Like, there's resilience in friendships, there's resilience in professional capacities, there's resilience in health, there's resilience in mental health, there's resilience everywhere. There's resilience for different kinds of professions. If you do a difficult job, if you've suffered trauma, whatever, these are all different types of resilience. They are generally similar, but the resilience you need in a workplace isn't quite the same thing as the resilience you're going to need when you're living with a chronic condition. The focus is different, and what you need to focus on is different. But at the same time, resilience is a skill. So even if you don't have it, it doesn't matter because you can learn it. That's what I did. I was able to learn resilience. It was a process, I'll tell you. It was not easy. It was a situation where I had to basically drag my emotional self, kicking and screaming through this gauntlet of insecurities that had plagued me my whole life, and pull that part of me through all of those awful feelings and thoughts and disaster thinking and all that stuff to get to the other side where I have more control. I can look back and say, you know what? It's not actually that bad. And I'm actually able to control more my reactions now. Not perfectly, obviously. I still have good and bad moments. I still get shocked. I still, suffer the consequences of bad news. But at the same time, the amount of time that I spend thinking about those things, the amount of time that I spend feeling badly about those things is lower. And that's what's really important about resilience. The better you are at it, the stronger you get, the more practice you have using these skills, the shorter amount of time you're going to get knocked down for, and the more time you're going to spend looking at solutions, looking at making your life better, looking at making yourself feel better. Now, resilience is a little bit more complicated to talk about than motivation and positivity, because those are generally well understood terms. Resilience, because it's a little more complicated, I'm going to jump to a PowerPoint slide to show you some of the things that you can ask yourself to gauge where your resilience level is at. And in addition to that, sort of help prepare yourself for what you may need to learn about resilience so that when something does happen or something goes wrong in your life, you have an understanding, you have some basic skills to use. Now, I'm not the kind of person who thinks that you can prepare for every potential and handle it perfectly without experiencing it. I think that the experience is part of the process. But having said that, I think I would have really, really benefited if someone had explained this concept to me before I was in crisis, so that I could have gotten a better sense of what I needed to do and think about while I was dealing with my own sort of diagnosis process and figuring out what my treatment plan was going to be and so forth. So I'm going to flip over that slide right now and then basically go from there. When you're thinking about resilience, I think asking yourself some questions related to how you respond to stress, pain, grief, and other negative emotions or reactions can really help you gauge where you're at. So the first question that I would ask myself is, are you able to remain or find a sense of calm after the initial shock of something bad happening? Do you have any specific techniques to weather that storm? And it can be anything from breathing and mindfulness exercises to meditation to talking it out with someone that you trust or care about. So if you have a support network or something like that. Do you give yourself space to experience and process what's happening without attacking yourself? Do you process your emotions in a positive way? Can you keep your thoughts grounded in reality instead of jumping to worst-case possibilities? Are you able to look at past experiences and successes you've had and use them to armor yourself against the current crisis? Are you proactive in dealing with adverse situations? So once the initial shock is over, are you able to start taking action to deal with it? And do you understand and accept the limits of your control of the situation? And again, do you have a support system? A partner, friends, family, a therapist, medical professionals, religious figures, etc., in your life that you can tap into for comfort, guidance, and acceptance. So if you've asked yourself all these questions and written down your answers, you will have a good idea of what you have and what you can work on in preparing for something that's inevitably going to happen to all of us. I think one of the things that we sometimes forget in life is even if we don't have a chronic condition right now, someone in our life is going to be touched by something. So whether it's parents, friends, family, brothers and sisters, our partners, our spouses, our children, our, whomever, someone in our life is going to be touched by something chronic, a chronic disease, a diagnosis for some sort of an illness that could potentially be fatal or terminal, or just wear and tear from old age. As people get older, health issues come up and we have to kind of deal with those, right? So the more we think about these things earlier, the better prepared we are for when they inevitably happen. Now, for anything that you don't have an answer for, if you're not sure about, those are things to do some research on. Read up on the subject. Do some website searches. I'll put some resources in the description below so that you can get started. Ask around, talk to some friends, some family, people who've gone through similar situations. They may have some advice, guidance, or resources that you can access as well. Or, you could just check out YouTube and channels like mine where people talk about their experiences and how they build themselves up and how they manage to deal with all this stuff. Because it's really important. The more information you have, the more perspectives you have, the greater your resources are, the greater toolkit you have to access and use when you need it. And the last thing I'm going to say is, while you're doing all of this, no matter how many or how few of those questions you had an answer for, always look back at what you've done in life already. Look at those difficult times that you've gotten through, challenges that you've overcome, roadblocks that you've climbed over, right? Think about that. Think about how difficult it was. Think about how long it took you. Think about what you learned along the way each time you had to progress through one of those difficult situations. If you do that, you can prove to yourself that you have the capacity, you have the ability, you have the strength, because you've already done some of this stuff. Maybe in a different context, maybe in a different way, but ultimately, the process of going through difficult things is similar no matter what you're dealing with. And you can sort of cross-pollinate your skill sets. You can use lessons you've already learned in difficult and new situations while also learning new skills and new ideas and new strategies that make you more effective as you go. So you can do it. You've already done it. But we don't always give ourselves enough credit for that. And I think that's one of the things we need to change. All right, that's enough about resilience for now. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. I believe in you, and I will see you later. Bye now.